A woman goes to her gynecologist. "What seems to be the problem?" asked the doctor. Woman: "Something is terribly wrong. I keep finding postage stamps from Costa Rica in my vagina." The doctor had a look, chuckled, and said, "Those aren't postage stamps, my dear. They're the stickers off the bananas." A husband discusses sexual protocol with his new wife. "Honey," he says, "when I want sex, I'll snuggle up to you and kiss your neck. If you're in the mood, turn around, grab my penis, and pull on it twice. If you're not in the mood, turn around and pull on it 100 times." My father is very old and frail, so he needs help when he leaves the house. The other day, I had to take him to the dentist. Due to COVID-19 protocols, every person who went into the building had to have a temperature check. There was a lady and her mother in front of us, and when checked, they both had a body temperature of exactly 92.3, which seemed cold to me. Because he had a doctoral degree, I decided to ask my father how cold was too cold for a body temperature. He responded, "Room." A general, a colonel, and a major were having a heated argument on the subject of sex. The general maintained that sex was 60% work and 40% fun. The colonel said that it was 75% work and 25% fun. The major thought it was 90% work and 10% fun. At the height of the argument, a private appeared at the door. "Let's leave it to him," said the major. The private listened carefully and said with an air of absolute finality, "If you will pardon me, sirs, sex is 100% fun and no work at all." "How do you figure that?" cried the astonished officers. "It is very simple," said the private. "If there was any work in it at all, you guys would have me doing it for you." A Jew and a Chinese man are in an argument. The Jew says, "I hate your people for what you did at Pearl Harbor." The Chinese man says, "What do you mean? That was the Japanese." The Jew replies, "Chinese, Japanese, Taiwanese, you're all the same." So the Chinese man says, "Well, I hate your people for sinking the Titanic." The Jew says, "That's ridiculous. An iceberg sank the Titanic." The Chinese man responds, "Iceberg, Goldberg, Silverberg, you're all the same." A regional manager of a Chinese restaurant chain was visiting one of the stores around the holidays. He was there to check how the store was doing, making sure safety protocols were in place, making sure it was clean, etc. Upon entering the restaurant, he was greeted with Christmas decor, lights, garland, Santa Clauses everywhere, and holiday music. "What's with the get-up?" the manager asked. "We wanted to get into the holiday spirit and cheer things up." "I like that. What's that sound I hear? It sounds like bells jingling or something." "That? Oh, our head chef wanted to put them on all our frying pans. Look, that's the Jingle Bell Walk." At university, students had to come up with a sentence in which the words love and sex both appeared. A female student's composition: "When two people deeply and passionately love each other and both reach a high level of mutual respect, then society morally and spiritually encourages that these two people should unite in the ecstasy of physical sex." A male student's composition: "I love sex." One day, the boss of a company approached his secretary. He said that he wanted to have sex with her. Naturally, she said no, but the boss responded that he would make it very quick. "I'll throw $1,000 on the floor. By the time you bend down and pick it up, I'll be done." She thought for a moment, then decided to call her boyfriend and tell him the proposition. Her boyfriend told her to accept the offer, but told her, "Ask him for $2,000, bend down and pick it up as fast as you can, and he won't have time to undress himself." She agrees and proposes this to her boss, who also agrees. The boyfriend hangs up laughing, already thinking about what they could do with the money. Half an hour goes by, and the boyfriend has still not heard anything back, so he decides to call his girlfriend. She answers the phone, and he asks her what has happened. The girlfriend responded, "The bastard used coins." Three friends are fishing when a crocodile comes ashore and grants them 3 wishes. The first friend says, "I wish I could catch a huge marlin." The crocodile swims away for a moment, then comes back. The friend then pulls in a massive marlin. "Amazing," says the second friend. "Well, you know what? I wish I were rich." The crocodile then swims underwater and fetches a treasure chest full of money and gold and gives it to him. "Incredible," says the third friend. "I've got a better one. I wish my penis touched the ground." The crocodile bites his legs off. A blonde sits next to a scientist. On a long flight, a scientist ends up sitting next to a blonde. Bored and looking for a bit of amusement, the scientist starts chatting with the blonde and realizes that she is dumb as rocks. Once the plane is in the air, the scientist offers to play a game with the blonde. The rules are very simple. I'll ask you a question, and if you don't know the answer, you'll give me $5. And then you ask me a question, and I don't know the answer, I'll give you $5. The person with the most money after 20 questions wins. The blonde, recognizing that the scientist was much smarter, balked at the deal, and so the scientist, being confident, upped the stakes. "If you ask me a question I can't answer, I'll give you $20. The blonde agreed, and the scientist started with the first question. "What is the chemical composition of water?" The blonde gave the scientist $5. On the blonde's turn, she asked, "What has 3 legs going up a hill and 4 legs going down?" The scientist thought and thought and thought, but was completely stumped. Even sneaking a peek and Googling didn't turn up an answer. Finally, the scientist has to admit defeat and hands over $20. The blonde asks for the next question, but the scientist questions, "Wait, what was the answer?" The blonde hands over $5. Tom is applying for a job as a signalman for the local railroad and is told to meet the inspector at the signal box. The inspector decides to give Tom a pop quiz, asking, "What would you do if you realized that 2 trains were heading towards each other on the same track?" Tom says, "I would switch one train to another track." "What if the lever broke?" asks the inspector. "Then I'd run down to the tracks and use the manual lever down there," answers Tom. "What if that had been struck by lightning?" challenges the inspector. "Then," Tom continued, "I'd run back up here and use the phone to call the next signal box. What if the phone was busy?" "In that case," Tom argued, "I'd run to the street level and use the public phone near the station. What if that had been vandalized?" "Oh, well," said Tom, "in that case I would run into town and get my Uncle Leo." This puzzled the inspector, so he asked, "Why would you do that?" "Because he's never seen a train crash." A guy calls a company and orders their 5-day, 5-pound weight loss program. The next day, there's a knock on the door, and there stands before him a voluptuous, athletic 19-year-old babe dressed in nothing but a pair of Nike running shoes and a sign around her neck. She introduces herself as a representative of the weight loss company. The sign reads, "If you can catch me, you can have me." Without a second thought, he takes off after her. A few miles later, puffing and puffing, he finally gives up. The same girl shows up for the next 4 days, and the same thing happens. On the 5th day, he weighs himself and is delighted to find he has lost 5 pounds as promised. He calls the company and orders their 5-day, 10-pound program. The next day, there's a knock at the door, and there stands the most stunning, beautiful, sexy woman he has ever seen in his life. She is wearing nothing but Reebok running shoes and a sign around her neck that reads, "If you catch me, you can have me." Well, he's out the door after her like a shot. This girl is in excellent shape, and he does his best, but no such luck. So for the next 4 days, the same routine happens, with him gradually getting in better and better shape. Much to his delight, on the 5th day, when he weighs himself, he discovers that he has lost another 10 pounds as promised. He decides to go for broke and calls the company to order the 7-day, 25-pound program. "Are you sure?" asks the representative on the phone. "This is our most rigorous program." "Absolutely," he replies. "I haven't felt this good in years." The next day, there's a knock at the door, and when he opens it, he finds a huge, muscular guy standing there wearing nothing but pink running shoes and a sign around his neck that reads, "If I catch you, you are mine." A blind man went to a restaurant. "Menu, sir?" asked the owner. "I'm blind. Just bring me one of your dirty forks, and I will smell it and order." The confused owner went to the kitchen to retrieve a fork and returned to the blind man. The blind man smelled the fork with a deep breath. "Yes, I will have the lamb with seasoned potatoes and spring vegetables." "Unbelievable," thought the owner. The blind man ate and left. 2 weeks later, the blind man returned. The owner, wanting to know how good his smell is, quickly went to the kitchen where his wife Brenda was cooking and said, "Do me a favor and rub this fork over your private part," which she did. He then goes to the blind man and gives him the fork. The blind man takes it and puts it to his nose and says, "Oh, interesting. I never knew Brenda worked here." An older gentleman was being tailgated by a stressed-out lady on a busy street. Suddenly, the light turned yellow just ahead of him, and he did the right thing. He stopped at the crosswalk to allow the waiting pedestrians to cross. The lady behind him lost it. She battered the horn, yelling and gesturing wildly because she missed her chance to make the light. In the middle of her rant, there was a tap on her window. She looked up to see a police officer. She was taken to the police station and placed in a holding cell. A couple of hours later, the officer opened the door and said, "I'm very sorry for the mistake, ma'am. Let me explain. You see, I pulled up behind your car while you were blowing your horn, flipping off the guy in front of you, and shouting cuss words I, even as a police officer, have never heard before. Then I noticed the 'What would Jesus do' bumper sticker, the 'Follow me to Sunday school' sticker, and the chrome-plated Christian fish on the trunk. Naturally, I assumed the car was stolen." The Navy found they had too many officers and decided to offer an early retirement bonus. They promised any officer who volunteered for retirement a bonus of $1,000 for every inch measured in a straight line between any 2 points in his body. The officer got to choose what those 2 points would be. The first officer who accepted asked that he be measured from the top of his head to the tip of his toes. He was measured at 6 feet and walked out with a bonus of $72,000. The second officer who accepted was a little smarter and asked to be measured from the tip of his outstretched hands to his toes. He walked out with $96,000. The third one was a non-commissioned officer, a grizzly old chief who, when asked where he would like to be measured, replied, "From the tip of my weenie to my testicles." It was suggested by the pension man that he might want to reconsider, explaining about the nice big checks the previous 2 officers had received. But the old chief insisted, and they decided to go along with him, providing the measurement was taken by a medical officer. The medical officer arrived and instructed the chief to drop him, which he did. The medical officer placed the tape measure on the tip of the chief's weenie and began to work. "Dear Lord," he suddenly exclaimed, "where are your testicles?" The old chief calmly replied, "Vietnam."
Old Mr. Boudreaux finally retired from farming in South Louisiana, but soon became very bored. He had doctored his cows over the years, so he decided to open a clinic and put an ad out that read, "Doc Boods, get cured, $500. If I can't cure you, get back $1,000. He hired a pretty young nurse and worked 5 days a week. In town, a young transplanted Old Miss lawyer was positive that this so-called Doc Boudreaux didn't know beans about medicine. Always interested in making money, he went to Doc Bood's clinic to get himself an easy $1,000. Young lawyer: Doc Boudreaux, I have lost all taste in my mouth. Can you please help me? Doc Bood: Nurse, please bring the medicine from box 22 and put 3 drops in the patient's mouth. Young lawyer: Ah, this is gasoline. Doc Bood: Congratulations, you got your taste back. That'll be $500. This annoyed young lawyer, so after a couple of days he returned to the clinic, figuring to recover his money. Young lawyer: I have lost my memory. I cannot remember anything. Doc Bood: Nurse, please bring medicine from box 22 and put 3 drops in the patient's mouth. Young lawyer: Oh, no, you don't. That's gasoline. Doc Bood: Congratulations, you got your memory back. That'll be $500. Young lawyer, having now lost $1,000, left angrily. The next week, he came back for a final try at recovering his cash. Young lawyer: My eyesight is failing, and I can hardly see. Doc Bood: Well, I don't have any medicine for that, me, so here's your $1,000 back. Young lawyer: But this is only $500. Doc Bood: Congratulations, you got your vision back. That'll be $500.